Well, hey there team, welcome back to the channel, welcome back to Worth It Then, Worth It Now, a side project I run here on my second channel where I celebrate games of yesteryear. They're not in vogue or particularly contemporary, however, there are some games that just deserve another shout out, another revisit, and I try and tie it in with a sale where possible. So today we're looking at the one and only XCOM 2. And look, this is one of the greatest games of all time, there's no dancing around it. I remember it as such, and especially around those launch years, I put so much time into it. But booting it up today, just, to do this video, get a bit of B-roll, it absolutely blew me away how excellent it still is to this day. It still holds up, and I badly want to keep playing it. Again, I lament that's the kind of curse of running this channel. is that when I look at these classic bangers from yesteryear, I just want to play them instead of whatever else I'm playing at the moment. So probably safe to say high praise all round. It's on deep sale at the time of this video, 95% off, going for $5. However, it is also probably worth mentioning, maybe you watch this in the future, this game routinely goes on ultra deep sale. It almost has a reputation for it, I would think actually, but I'm aware that it goes on sale very often. And all that does is help boost its legacy, because even as a full price game today, it is worth it. It's worth every cent. There's so many mechanics and just moving parts, and that's the core game. I would also argue that War of the Chosen, which is the DLC that really doesn't necessarily change the game, but it adds so much more to it that it's kind of a must play. Like once War of the Chosen exists and you're aware of it, you kind of have to play XCOM 2 with War of the Chosen. So I suppose my caveat is that you should pick that up as well at the very least. There's some other cool cosmetic packs, adds some voice lines and adds different costumes. You can probably see in my B-roll, I've got a lot of Anarchy's Children, which a lot of people that take themselves very seriously hate that DLC. What it is, it's one of a few where it adds a bunch of different skin options for your characters, and generally speaking, it's all a random pool. You can go into the options menu and you can flick a slider to see how aggressively it puts that sort of stuff in there, and to which I say yes on all sliders. And so yeah, I've got some dickheads with bloody giant ponytails straight out of Mad Max 2, and a guy with a mohawk through his helmet, and I don't know, look, yes, it's dumb, but it adds this kind of personality as well. Each to their own, right? You can just disable it if you don't really like it. And what we're talking about memes, there's a voice line, which I believe the history is that it was just placeholder voices from a sound designer, and it's deadpan and terrible, intentionally so, like an inside studio joke, like, moving out. Sounds like Blackboard from Mr. Squiggle, uh-oh, I'm in trouble, I'm dead. And I think the internal staff just thought it was that fucking funny that they put it in as a bonus voice line anyway. So doing my playthrough, it randomly gave me that voice, and God, it's funny. It makes me laugh so hard. But anyway, to get back to the game of XCOM, because I don't want to make this video too long. However, there is a lot to cover. So this is, as much as this is reminiscing and remembering nostalgia of, a 10-year-old excellent game, I will still go over what I can for those that live under a rock or have no idea, because this is one of the more high-profile Steam games ever. So I'll try my best to cover it off. Essentially, it's part of a resurrection, reimagining, before all that crap was popular, to be honest, of the XCOM series. The XCOM series is from, the early age of PC gaming. We're talking like mid-90s, something like that. Very hardcore, squad-based tactical game. A lot of the core concepts in these games, in the modern versions, were there in the beginning. Running an organization across multiple bases over the planet, trying to protect against an alien invasion. And XCOM 1, the reimagining, the previous one to this, was very one-to-one around that. You're essentially dealing with a first contact invasion scenario. Now, where this game goes really off the rails and essentially lands perfectly, a sequel that someone like James Cameron would be proud of. That pivot that is a worthy successor and yet goes in a different direction. And I'm looking at things like Alien to Aliens and Terminator 1 to Terminator 2. So in this, the idea is the canon ending was that the enemy won, the aliens kind of won at the end of XCOM 1, and this is a jump 20 years forward into the future. They've been fully integrated, much like something like Half-Life 2, actually. Your Earth is ruled with an iron fist by aliens, and there's a lot of propaganda and effort to make your faction, the resistance, a negative element, right? More terroristic than freedom fighter. And on that, much of the new mechanics that were implemented at the sort of base engagement level revolve around guerrilla warfare, starting in stealth and then trying to get a really jump on the enemy initiate that wipes out a bunch of them. And then it goes into a more traditional play. So the mechanics tie into this sort of subversive direction that the story goes. So you're very much an element of freedom fighters trying to free the earth. And I won't go into it too much, but the commander who you are, like in an almost fourth wall through the eyes of, has been in captivity. And that's what kicks this game off, is that they spring you from your slumber, jail, whatever. I know there's a statute of limitations probably up, but let's not talk about details too much. It's worth going back and playing fresh and enjoying the story and the intrigue therein. So broadly, the mechanics are similar to previous XCOM titles and a lot of stuff that apes on it, in that there's sort of a split management system. You manage your base like an ant farm side on, building out buildings, trying to get synergies, that sort of stuff, while tackling research and engineering projects. Your base in this case is like a mobile air fortress that can fly around, and you pick missions on the map to attend to. Now, some of them will be actual deployments where you send an away team of, these randomized goober troopers that you become attached to, and others are just sort of time, you sit here for 7 days scanning, you'll get some resources. But very quickly it ramps to such a point that it is too many plates to spin. So you become overwhelmed and you have to really triage what you can and can't get. Much of the game design is that, which may irk some people. Like there's in-game timers in a lot of the rounds, get to point X before the bomb goes off or whatever. But honestly, the game doesn't work quite as well if it lets you rest on your laurels. You are supposed to be a hit and run element who are always the weaker part of the equation. Again, that guerrilla mentality. And I feel like letting you rest on your laurels without a timer to build up an empire is just counterintuitive to what they're going for. Anyway, that's kind of the core game. But War of the Chosen adds so much stuff, it's hard to even really list it all. But the really big ticket items are that there are some other resistance chapters that you're trying to kind of unite the tribes, right? And what was quite unique and still holds up very well is they got the voice actors out of Star Trek The Next Generation, of all things. I don't know if people realize this, but there are 3 main characters: Volk, and this Outrider sniper chick, and then Mox. Oh my god, Mox is such a badass. And he's essentially just Worf from The Next Generation, and they got Michael Dorn to voice him. And on top of that, they got Riker and Deanna Troy's voice actors for the other characters as well. And it's just really cool that core clump of Next Generation characters or voices. Like I said, they're almost one-to-one of their positions they hold, and like I said, they just got old mate to play another stoic alien, much like Worf, so he fits in perfectly like a glove. And they're all at each other's throats, they've got mixed histories and they work all that out, but it adds into different units with different flexibilities. You got the sniper type dudes who can cloak, and then the Mox type characters, more mobile and jumping around on rooftops. And then there's a third faction, but that's a bit later on. Anyway, so that adds so much to your roster. But then you have the titular Chosen, who are 3 characters that can only best be described as legally distinct from the Nemesis system from Shadow of Mordor, Shadow of War. If you're not across it, that Nemesis system, the thing everyone loves and thinks the greatest thing ever and you never saw ever again, actually has a design patent against it, which I think expired recently. It might have been 10 years or something like that. But anyway, yeah, the Nemesis system, which you would think would be in every game ever, was legally not allowed to. So there's sort of a soft Nemesis thing going on here. Not quite as robust, but you have these 3 boss characters for the enemy, these like super assassins, and on your playthrough they will have some unusual randomized traits attached to them, and a lot of that is key to how you engage with them. Maybe you can't actually physically melee this dude ever, but you have to shoot him instead, or he dodges the first shot, or I can't quite remember all the nuance, but the 3 of them are very different. Like knife assassins, a sniper, more of a psychic dude, but they add so much more to that, and they tie in with the separate side factions that you're trying to team team up with. They're familiar with these guys, have been getting hunted by each one respectively. And then like there's a million other mechanics that got added in XCOM 2 base that weren't actually in XCOM 1. You know, there's a camaraderie thing, so like as units level up and serve together, they actually can bond and become buddies. And all through the game you can take little photos. There's a built-in, not really a photo mode, but more of a propaganda poster app, and it will prompt you at just about any turn where it's significant. So if these two guys become buddies and they work together and they have synergy, you can take a photo and they'll be doing the bloody Predator handshake, pumping iron, and it's just excellent. It knows exactly how to get you invested in these little random soldiers and watch as they grow together over the course of a campaign and, you know, really hurt you, because you should be playing this on Iron Man. When your dude cops an unfortunate bullet to the head after 5 missions of bonding with old mate, and then the other bloke breaks and you got to try and scrabble to get it all together and then grieve afterwards. It is part of the cycle of what makes XCOM great. Anyway, obviously I'm gushing. I think it's a great game. If you're not sold on this, I don't know how else to sell you further. If you were just along for the nostalgia ride, I appreciate it. Thanks for being here. But I would tell you now, if you're going to take any of my recommendations ever seriously, it's going to be this one. If you haven't played XCOM 2, pick it up now. You won't regret it. Anyway, team, much as leave it there for the time being, and I'll catch you guys on the next one.